In today's video, I will be going through my camera settings when filming with the Canon SL2 for filming talking head sequences like this one. So this is what my shot usually looks like. I like to have the flip screen out so I can kind of look over and see if I'm framed up right and then adjust as necessary. But it's not always good to be looking at the flip screen the whole time, or else it'll just look pretty weird. So usually I record these sequences with autofocus, so I usually click on that, make sure it has the face tracking, because I like to move around a lot, and having Canon's dual pixel autofocus kind of makes filming yourself a little bit easier. Full HD 1920 by 1080 is the full resolution that this camera can go up to, and I like 24 frames per second because it gives me a more cinematic feel. Kind of like you're watching some sort of high-end production that pertains to cinema. They usually use a frame rate of 24 frames per second, and it has a lower file size, so that always helps a little bit. For white balance, since my lights are daylight balanced, so it has the same or similar color temperature as the sun, so I usually switch that over to daylight and it'll look more natural on my face. So for the picture style, I have my own custom preset here. I'll just click on that. So for this one, it's the portrait picture style, but I put sharpness all the way down, contrast all the way down, and saturation is just, so it's one notch away from being all the way down. The reason why I do this is because I like to have as much control over the colors as I possibly can. Even though the portrait style still kind of adds a little bit of vibrancy and like saturation to it, I find that I can work a little bit faster when it comes to the colors and help put out these videos. But if you want like as much control over your image as possible, I would definitely go with neutral. And so whenever I start recording, this is what I see a little bit. And so these two buttons over here are the shutter and the aperture. And the aperture controls how much light is being let in to the sensor through the lens. So right now it's widest with the kit lens is an f4, but if I were to zoom in a little bit, it actually kind of varies a little bit. It goes down to a 5.6, which is that's super close and super dramatic. I kind of like it. But basically it's just little limitations with using a kit lens. So there's a general rule out there that's called the 180-degree shutter rule, and which basically states whatever frame rate you have, which in this case is 24 frames per second, you want to double that number and that becomes your shutter speed. But most DSLRs don't have the option to have a 48th of a shutter, so we go to whatever's closest, which in this case is 50. So I kind of just round off a little bit there. Slightly breaking the rules, but hey, it is close enough. For ISO, and this controls how sensitive that the camera sensor is to the light being let in by a combination of the aperture and the shutter speed. I usually keep that setting at around a 400 since I am indoors and I have a big old light right here. And the only downside to increasing your ISO is that more noise will be introduced to your footage. And noise / grain is just those like jumpy, pixels that are just jumping at you. It's just like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, I never asked for you. Get out my house. But yeah, hopefully you got some insight into the behind the scenes process of how I make these videos. And hopefully you got some valuable information out of this video. So that being said, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to have yourself a blessed day.